So we saw a bracket today. Let's do a show.
Welcome back to the D3 Datacast. We're going to do things a little different this week. We're going to kick off the week with a bonus episode. We just got done watching the bracket reveal on NCAA.com, finally. And so we'll get out this little bonus episode, kind of talk about our initial thoughts, and then we'll be following up with a full normal episode, including our tournament predictions and outlook that will be dropping on Tuesday morning. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, we wanted to get some quick thoughts out because after all the speculation about regional rankings and Pool C selections, we actually have the official Pool C selections. And and Matt, you and your Hoopsville cohort came up with 19 out of the 20, once again, coming up just one short. So let's go through the official list. And we have the official Pool C list. It's not necessarily in any official order because we don't know that information, but we just tried to line up with the Hoopsville prediction. And then also thought it'd be interesting to take a look just how, if you looked at the Massey ratings and stripped out everyone who won an automatic bid, what are the next 20 left? And then the same thing for the efficiency ratings, Matt, that you run. Just as a point of comparison, I don't think we need to get into what's right, what's wrong, but just as a point of comparison, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at how those other methods would see the next 20 at large bids, and we'll go from there. There'll be plenty of time to debate that, but this is just a quick look.
Yeah, 2 years in a row for the Hoopsville crew. We end up with 19 out of 20, it looks like. And maybe, we don't know the order, maybe it was the last pick. I think Mike Schauer last year almost confirmed that it was their last pick. I don't know if that was officially confirmed, but yeah, our order here, the Pool C, you can see on the left, Hoopsville kind of next. We were considering Utica, we were considering Claremont Mud Scripps, we were considering UW La Crosse. We kind of ended up crossing out Utica because they had the lowest strength of schedule of those kind of being considered, or in a low range. And their regionally ranked wins weren't very quality, whereas the other two had some quality there, but it was definitely one in our consideration. I think I can see why they maybe took Utica with their resume, even though, we took UW La Crosse. We'll have to take the 19 out of 20 and try another year to get the perfect 20 for the crew. But yeah, so that's the list. I think you can kind of see based on the criteria, based on what we thought the committee was doing all year, that Rochester got in. I think one that was saying, I wouldn't personally do that, but I can see this committee doing it based on what we've seen in the regional rankings. For example, Carnegie Mellon appearing in the Region 7 rankings in week 3 with a 625, I believe it was, winning percentage above, was it Wabash and Heidelberg at that time, maybe? Two of those teams who had what looked like Pool C bubble resumes at the time. So I thought 640 was competitive. We do see Rochester get in. Astronomical strength of schedule. Lots of results versus regionally ranked opponents. So they get in. But we also, we hear, being on the hashtag D3Hoops Twitter, we hear about, our team was strong versus Massey and our criteria didn't stack up. So we just thought it would be fun to kind of look at, take out the Pool A's, who would be the 20 strongest remaining teams by the computer ratings. And that's what you see in the right two columns. The red teams are the teams that the computers both agree on as being kind of the top 20 remaining teams. The orange ones were one computer or the other thought they might have been the top 20. UW La Crosse also red in there because the Hoopsville crew thought they could be in the mix, and the computers both thought that they were of that quality. We know Massey, we know efficiency ratings aren't criteria. They're looking at different things. We've talked about that all year, but just as a point of interest to compare, like Guilford, they were a team who had, I think, 5 losses on the year. 3 of those were to Randolph-Macon, who was the number 1 team in the country, was probably number 1 by the NCAA criteria, as number 1 by the computers and the human voters. So that's kind of tough for Guilford. Even though they played a strong schedule, they weren't able to come up with these wins against teams in the regional rankings. And I think that ended up really hurting them and their resume. Very similar to a team like Roanoke. I think they only ended up with 1 regionally ranked win. And even though they're strong in an absolute sense, it just doesn't look good by the committee. Team like Calvin, who's on this list, I think Barry maybe didn't quite make either of these lists, but they were both teams that had good winning percentages, low strength of schedule by the NCAA criteria, and then also very few regionally ranked wins. So just teams that the computers and the human voters think are strong, but by the current NCAA criteria standards, you can see why they weren't selected. and in some cases weren't even really in the regional ranking picture for most of the season. So they're just a difference between one of our very first episodes. We talked about the different types of ratings or rankings, and it's we saw it this year with the NCAA criteria. They have 5 primary criteria. They use those. They look at those. They interpret those. How they do, and other things like a top 25 voter or a computer rating will look at different things and determine team strength. And they're different, and they probably should be different. You can have the discussion of should we be looking at the best teams for Pool C selections? I don't know. Should you be having the most deserving teams, whatever that means, maybe? And having those discussions, I think, is important. But it's just interesting to look at who might be the strongest remaining teams versus who maybe got in.
Yep. And going back to Rochester, like you said, I don't think it's a surprise to see them go in. Especially to see what they were up against as some of the other resumes around them stacked up as you guys were doing the going through the board last night for those final picks. But like you said, when Carnegie Mellon got ranked ahead of Wabash with a 625 winning percentage, you had to, I guess, yeah, right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, you can debate the merits, but I think at that point the committee was signaling that Rochester at 640, with an even better strength of schedule, an even better set of regionally ranked opponents, was going to be an easy pick over any resume that ended up looking like Wabash had at that
Yeah.
for that week of regional rankings. Like that was, I think, again, you can debate whether it's right or not, but Rochester's inclusion here seems very consistent with some of the
Yeah.
things we saw during the regional ranking process. So that's where you get into the separate conversation of, is the criteria doing what we want it to do, or is it being used in a way that is best? But that's a different discussion
Yeah.
for a different day.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you're right. I think Rochester was broadcast to us as being a viable selection here from what we had seen, and those other teams like Calvin and Roanoke, I think it was broadcast to us that they weren't going to be a viable selection. I think on the Rochester front, the only thing that made me question about whether they would be picked is we saw so many upsets and bid thieves that those teams like Heidelberg kind of fell out of the picture and weren't really in Pool C consideration after all. So there were some stronger resumes. We thought a week ago UW La Crosse was probably safe, and they were one of our final picks. They were on the board with Rochester, and we see them be out. So that made me question of whether they would pick them, but it was more about the strength of the remaining resumes, not whether they would consider 640 winning percentage viable, which is what Rochester ended up with. So yeah.
Okay, so with the actual Pool C's now confirmed, we can go back to the fantasy draft that we conducted back in early December. And I am pleased to report that against all odds, against the Bob Quillman Q line predicting a 22-18 victory for you, Matt, it was actually me who came out with the 21 point to 19 point victory in the Pool C fantasy draft way back in early December. I had the better read on the Pool C picture. Go ahead and give me all my credit now.
Well, I mean, first of all, this is what people tuned into this episode for. They wanted to see what was the Pool C fantasy draft results. Don't care about the
Exactly.
bracket. Don't care about anything else, right? It's what was the fantasy draft results. No, you did a good job. You had a great conference tournament with Oshkosh. Losing Hopkins, losing that final. Williams losing the semifinal. Rochester getting in. They looked like an absolute lock. I think we thought they were going to get to Pool A, right? I think that was one of the criticisms of your pick was that was too early for Rochester because it was supposed to be a Pool A.
Listen,
Um,
I know I got look. Not only did the
it
Q
was a
line
great
pick
get.
against me, I got Bob crushed me because no, Williams and Rochester, they're overwhelming favorites for
Yep.
Pool A.
Yep.
Terrible picks.
But interesting to see the difference between yours. I had all but one team make the tournament. You had a few more miss the
Yeah,
tournament, but you got the Pool C's correct, which was we
right.
you know we did the scoring difference: 3 points for the Pool C, 1 point for the Pool A. I will call it for myself. I had a list. I kind of had an NJAC strategy here, and I
Yeah.
think I said on the episode Montclair State was one that I had just off. I think I should have picked Montclair State rather than Kane, and I would have won here 22-21. But I unfortunately went with Kane. That was my only team I picked that missed the tournament. But pretty impressive that we had got, what is it, 11 Pool C correct back in December. And then we had 4 additional that actually made the tournament. That's pretty good. You
Yeah,
could have.
you had the NJAC strategy. I had the NESCAC strategy. I ended up not having the right team there with Trinity, and you had the not right NJAC with Kane, but similar. And then, but
Yeah,
we got to also point out that Swarthmore Johns Hopkins final was a big swing here
yeah,
because that put 3 points for
yeah,
me and 1 point for you. So reverse those results, and
and almost nails the Q line.
well, if you look at it, 21-19, that's a total of 40. And so, the Q line, he didn't have the odds correct on the spread, but the over under was right on the
Was
button.
right on. Yeah,
So I'll
yep,
I'll give Bob credit for that. I mean, his view of my draft was completely off. Um, a total bubble out view of our fantasy draft here, but at least in the aggregate, he comes out looking okay.
yep.
Not quite as good as me winning the whole thing, but
Couple of the thoughts I had. One, when we were designing this, we wanted to make sure we got extra points for the Pool C because we wanted St. Joseph to be a terrible pick in this because, of course, they're going to win the Pool A, and there's no doubt about
right.
that. St. Joseph takes their only loss in the conference final, and they end up on Pool C. Guilford and Lacrosse, who you had picked, they were on our board in Hoopsville to be a Pool C selection. So those ended up being good-looking kind of shots taken there in December of Pool C teams. Really, only Kane and Trinity weren't in the tournament picture by the time the season was ended. They were both in the regional ranking picture for both those regions. Trinity probably had fallen out, I think, but they were kind of there. So for
Well,
us
and
to
we
get all
and
these
we
picks,
yeah, we totally knew that the UAA would come down to Case and Wash U.
yeah,
That's why we didn't pick them,
oh
right?
yeah, easy, right? But yeah, I mean, we did a pretty good job back then. I think Widener, Scranton weren't in the Pool C picture, but I think partially picking them because they could have made runs in their conference tournament. I thought both of those maybe would have picked up more regionally ranked wins and whatever. So I think those were poorer picks that I got saved by conference tournament runs in hindsight. But I think we did okay. I think I'll give us a thumbs up. We'll do it again next year. Wasn't totally embarrassing of an exercise.
Well, if Widener had lost in the conference tournament and there hadn't been so much carnage, they still may
Yeah,
have been in consideration there for one of those last few spots. So
true.
under the right circumstance, even it looks like not a terrible pick anyway.
Yeah, very true.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the bracket, Matt. Did you have? Let me pull up my copy. I think you're going to be able to put it on the screen for us as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I can get my stuff in order here. See if I can get it to pull up correctly.
A couple
I got
quick.
it.
Okay, great. A couple quick thoughts that I had. Just a few little interesting things we saw. Okay, we got a Texas pod, but it was really interesting and cool how the committee handled basically the rest of the West Coast or Region 10 with, let's see, Whitworth is going to Swarthmore to play St. John Fisher. Cal Lou is going to play at Rowan.
Wait, where are you in the bracket right now?
Oh, I'm jumping around because I'm talking about
Okay.
the California teams. Just
Okay.
interesting how they, um, getting flown. If you're having to fly a team out somewhere, you can put them anywhere, right? So
Yeah.
it's really cool to see how they did that with going to places like Swarthmore to play St. John Fisher, with going to let's see, Pomona Pitzer's going to St. Joseph, Connecticut to play Williams, and Kalu is going to Rowan.
Yeah, I think I like how they use the California teams to fly around. I think my one disappointment is in Texas that they just stuck with ASC versus
Versus
SCAC.
SCAC, yeah.
I would have loved one flight to be used if we could use one additional flight, get East Texas Baptist out somewhere, and maybe bring either Whitworth or Cal Lou into the pod, something like that, to play St. Thomas. I think that's my one quibble. It'd be nice to break that up a little bit. I think we knew maybe Mary Hardin Baylor versus Shriner was an okay match that kind of had to happen. If we could have used one more flight in Region 10 to balance that a little bit, I think I would have been happier there.
Yeah, that sets up St. Thomas and East Texas Baptist being kind of a first round heavy hitter. Um, a few more of those type heavy hitter first round matchups that jumped out to me were Whitewater against Wabash in a game that will be at Case Western Reserve. I think that's a pretty interesting one. Um, Pomona Pitzer Williams at
Yep.
St. Joseph, I think is really interesting. Were there any first round matchups that really piqued your interest, Matt?
I think we were just talking about kind of on the East Coast. Pomona Pitzer is playing Williams. I think that's a really strong matchup for the first round, especially being at St. Joseph. I think that's one of the strongest pods overall in this whole thing. That'll be a fascinating one to watch. That'll be a really good game. You get kind of that Southern California versus the Northeast, and I like that they were able to find a way to get a type of matchup like that into the tournament. Another interesting, let's see, first weekend matchups. Let me try to find them on the bracket here. Sorry if
In
I'm.
Hampton, Sydney, Emory in the first round is really interesting.
Yes, and that was one I think if you weren't going to maybe fly Christopher Newport out to Southern California or something like that, I think that's one that you can see. There's kind of Emory's on an island where they can't get to any other natural hosts, and since Christopher Newport can't host and everyone can get to Hampton, Sydney, I think that's one that makes geographic sense. That's another really strong pod. I think Emory and Hampton, Sydney is an okay first round matchup. It's not too bad. It's a little bit. They're both a little bit higher than maybe you'd want to have in the first round matchup. But then also being at Christopher Newport, that just makes it a very strong overall pod. But one probably that has to work out geographically. We talk about sometimes the Region 10 teams getting quote unquote screwed with matchups or getting sent out there. I think Christopher Newport, who's likely to be a fairly high seed, is getting a tough pod right out of the bat. So it's not just like there are other geographic islands, sort of, and I think Christopher Newport's an odd geographic island, being in Virginia, where they don't get to a lot of other places all that naturally very well. Things like that can happen. I thought in some parts of the country, let's go to the bottom left of the bracket. I think there were
Yeah,
some weaker
I want to
pods
talk
here.
I want to talk about that one too. Yeah, go ahead with.
Let's start with UW Oshkosh, Hope and Bethany Lutheran, UW Oshkosh, Fontbonne. That I think is a fairly light pod. I thought of Hope as being kind of like a number three-ish in a pod, and I think they're kind of more of like a number two-ish here. Bethany Lutheran was kind of on that like 3-4 line for me. So I think that's a pretty light pod. It's going to be a really, well, it makes for a potential good matchup in Hope and UW Oshkosh, a matchup we saw in November. But there's this part of the country, there wasn't whole lot of options, I think, for stronger pods. North Park and Wash U, two really good teams that were probably both in hosting contention, but then getting Sewanee and Co. kind of maybe makes up for that a little bit. Neither of those two teams, I think, were very highly seeded. So those kind of stood out to me as some maybe weaker seeding in a pod, and then also just further down in that bracket at Mount Union. Anderson playing Mount Union is very natural. NYU and Lancaster Bible, I think that was a little bit soft there. Maybe NYU gets a little bit of a more difficult opponent. I could have seen that happening.
Yeah, and in this same region of the bracket, I think it's worth talking about North Park, because if there's a team that maybe got a little bit of a heavy hand dealt to them, it'd be North Park here. I don't think the overall strength of the pod is so bad, but if you look at this, it seems like one that if you didn't have geography considerations, maybe this is at North Park. But with Sewanee entering the mix, they can get to Wash U. Wash U will be hosting this, and so now you're setting up a potential second round game where North Park is potentially looking at a true road game here. So I don't think the overall pod is stacked, but probably not what North Park was hoping to see in today's bracket reveal.
Yeah, I think it was really close, probably in Region 8 between North Park and Wash U. I think the rankings we ended up using on Hoopsville, which North Park wasn't in Pool C consideration, but I think we had Wheaton 1, then Wash U, then North Park, if I recall correctly. So I think that was a close call. If Wash U was number 2 in that region, then I think they probably get the seeding advantage. For me, when I look at kind of just my own personal overall seeds, I had these two teams pretty close to that part of the country where you have to decide who's the last number 1 and host and who's the top number 3, and then the top number 2, and then you have to send a number 2 to a number 1. So I've been thinking for a long time that North Park and Wash U were pretty natural to be paired together if they didn't maybe both host for some reason. But I agree there was maybe a decision there between who was going to host. Once I saw Sewanee was in the tournament based on their conference tournament winning the Pool A, I think that pushed it toward Wash U because Wash U is one of the few places that were kind of in hosting range that they could get to within 500 miles if they didn't want to use a flight. So I think that definitely did tip the scale, but maybe by seeding, WashU was just ahead of North Park. I could have seen that be the case as well.
All right. Anything else surprise you, Matt? I know you had already dug a little bit into bracketing, and it seems like a lot of what you were looking at kind of came to pass with Rowan and Stockton both getting hosts, with John Carroll not hosting. Um, any thoughts? I mean, maybe there aren't really any thoughts because a lot of what you're seeing here is what you expected.
Yeah, I was basing that a lot on what we saw in the top 16 reveal. I know a lot's happened since then, but I thought Rowan and Stockton were both higher than I would have expected them to be in the top 16. I thought if you didn't consider the head-to-head, Stockton maybe had the stronger resume between those two teams, but Rowan kept beating Stockton head-to-head, so they were staying ahead.
Yeah.
And it looked to me, in my interpretation of everything, like that was bumping Rowan up above Stockton rather than pulling Stockton down below Rowan. Maybe that doesn't matter. But I thought that the way that the committee had treated those two teams, that it looked like they were both going to be in seeding range. For my own personal, again, stuff, I thought Stockton was getting close to that cutoff line of maybe not hosting. So by last night, I would have been not surprised if Stockton didn't end up maybe going to someplace like Hopkins or something else. But that's one thing that looked like it was going to be the case, that the committee was treating those two teams very highly. John Carroll, I think losing that semifinal really hurt them. If they had won that, they would have been in range to host. For my own personal seeding, that put them right around that line as well, where I could have seen them being that last kind of, um, if you think of a D1 style seeding like a number 4. Now I think we see them kind of as a number 5, and that's really how it looks in this bracket with Oswego State here. That Carroll was maybe the 5 and Oswego State was the 4 in this region, and it was right on that line for me for John Carroll, where it could have gone either way.
Obviously, one part of the picture here we don't have are game times. I just pulled up d3hoops.com scheduled page, and it looks like we're starting to get
Okay.
a couple times. It was really cool last year. We got a bunch of staggered starts. So the first one was maybe around noon or 1 p.m., something like that. And we got a kind of a steady stream of games throughout the day. And it sounds like that's something that this year's committee liked and wants to see happen again. So I'm sure at this point they're going to be working through with their hosts to get those times nailed down. But what I'm seeing here is a 8:05 start for Oshkosh against Fontbonne and a 6:20 start for Case and Arcadia.
Okay.
So I would assume that means the other game at Case would be earlier in the afternoon. So anyway, just an
Yeah.
indication. Probably we can expect to see a lot of these staggered start times. So, but
Yeah.
we will have to wait and see how that actually turns out.
And I think last year's first game, if I remember correctly, was a yeshiva game so that they could
Yep.
be back to hotels and everything before sundown. So that one might have been particularly early, that they won't need to go that early this year. But yeah, it's nice to see the staggered start times. I think I had seen a tweet, maybe by d3hoops.com, that the women's committee was leaning towards doing the staggered start times this year as well. So that'll be nice for them if they're able to do that. That'll be cool. But yeah, I think I proposed some regions or some pods I thought were maybe too strong and too weak. That's just kind of my initial gut reaction. I don't have like proposed changes at this point. I haven't dug in. Hopefully, we'll come back with a bracket analysis episode later where we can, maybe we'll dive in deeper on some of those things, or have some sort of bracket predictions or projections type of a thing. But this is kind of our gut take after just minutes ago watched the live stream, or the pre-recorded live stream of NCAA.com selection. Um, and that was fun to see. So yeah, good that we have a bracket. I think it's going to be a fun tournament. It's going to be a great tournament. I think we're going to see some craziness in the first round. I just don't know what craziness it's going to be.
Like we said, we expect to come back to have an episode posted in the Tuesday morning where we go a little bit more in depth. And we'd like to do a mailbag like we have done with all our regular episodes. So if you have any mailbag items, anything that you would like for us to address, you can leave a comment on this episode. You can send us a tweet at D3Datacast or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/D3Datacast. And we will get that picked up. And in the meantime, Matt, bracket looks great. Congratulations on being part of a 19 out of 20 Pool C selection committee there, mock selection committee. But other than that, I think we'll leave it there for now and be back with our regularly scheduled episode for Tuesday morning.
Yeah, to be honest, 19 is our expectation. 20 would be great. I think 18 we'd be disappointed. So feel okay with 19. Would have wished we'd done a little bit better, but I had a good time. I think we did okay. I think we talked through the process, and that was fun. So thanks for recording this, Zach. We'll hopefully get another one out at some point for tomorrow morning. But until then, good job, team.